I had swum in my first Olympics back when I was 17 years old in 1984. Swam in 2 more after that. So swam a total of 3 Olympics in 84, 88, and 92. Won 4 Olympic medals. And at those Olympics in 92, I was actually called the grandmother of the team at age 25. You didn't really see a lot of athletes competing in the Olympic Games after being in college, and so they called me the grandma. And after those Olympics, I figured, well, I have 4 medals, I am kind of old, I really should start doing something else, and moved to New York and started a career. And really didn't touch the water for 7 years. I mean, the closest I came to getting in the water was maybe if I was lounging in the sun, I would go and dip in the pool and then get out. But that was pretty much it, 7 years, never swimming a lap. And about a year before the Olympic Games in 2000, I kind of got the itch again and decided to go for another Olympic Games. So I make the team at my 4th Olympics, and I'm in Sydney, and I'm getting my 5th medal put around my neck, and I'm sitting there crying, and wasn't crying because I got the medal. I was crying because I was done, and I was thinking, what am I going to do with my life now? My life's always been swimming. And I remember getting off the awards podium, and I was 33 years old then, and they called me the great grandma on that team. And I remember walking off and going to drug testing, getting drug tested, and then walking out of the Sydney arena, and this reporter stops me and says, "Excuse me, Ms. Torres, can I just ask you one quick question?" I'm like, "Sure." And he puts the camera on, sticks a microphone in my face. And so I was just wondering, you know, in another 7 years, 8 years, you're going to do this at the age of 41? And I looked at him and I said, that's the lamest question I ever heard, and I walked off. So needless to say, I'm still trying to find the guy and apologize to him. I really had no intentions of ever getting back in swimming. And like I said, at 25, I thought that was really old. 33, that was like ancient. There was no way I was going to do it at 41. That's, you know, your parents are that age, you know, and you just don't do those kind of things. So it never really occurred to me that I was going to do that. And I'll never forget, I finally, at the age of 38, got pregnant with my daughter. It took a long time, but was very thrilled. And I'm the type of person that really likes to work out. I love working out. I love staying in shape. I love the way it makes me feel on the inside and the out, and mentally how it makes me feel. And I'll never forget going to the gym when I was about 6 or 7 weeks pregnant, and getting on the Stairmaster and starting to do a little bit of exercise, and then just getting sick to my stomach. I'm like, well, that's not good. And I get in my car and I race home, and the next day I'm getting a little lull in my my morning sickness, and I rush to the gym and I get on the Stairmaster again, and I start feeling really sick, and I get off and I'm like, I gotta go. And I go home and I'm like, there's got to be something else I can do so I don't feel so sick all the time. And I don't know, I'm thinking, and finally, like, this light bulb goes off in my head. I'm like, wow, you know, I can swim. I get sick, there's a gutter, I get sick in the gutter, and then I keep going, you know, no problem. I go into the swim office, and there's an older woman in there, and I said, excuse me, I was just wondering, you know, what kind of swim programs you have. So she looked at me and she said, have you ever swum before? And I said, yeah, a little bit, you know. And she said, well, what kind of program are you looking for? And I said, well, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, maybe swimming with the kids. And I said that, and she looked at me like I was just, you know, what are you talking about? Swimming with kids, you look old. And I said, or, you know, swimming with the masters. And she said, tell you what, there's some brochures over here, and why don't you look at the brochures and you can decide, you know, what you want to swim. I was like, all right, great. And so I'm looking, and I can't decide. I mean, there's so many different programs. And she said, well, you ever been in any meets? And I'm like, yeah, I've been in a couple meets, you know. And she said, well, have you done anything like that you can write about and write down? And you can, you know, if you do that, maybe you can just tell me your accomplishments if you have any, and I can give it to the coach, and he could decide what group you're in. I was like, okay, 4 Olympic Games, you know, 9 Olympic medals, and going on and on. And I'm like, well, do I just hand this to her and make her like feel bad? And I'm like, nah. I went and I swam, and I did really well. I actually ended up qualifying for the Olympic trials, and people started coming up to me and they're like, God, you know, it'd be great to see a 40-year-old in the Olympics. I'm like, great, who's going, you know? Who are we cheering on? And they're like, you? I'm like, me? I go, I'm not going to the Olympics. I go, I just had a kid. And they're like, no, it'd be great. We cheer on our 40-year-old, someone our age. It'd be so much fun. And there were about 5,000 swimmers at this meet, and by the end of the meet, about 4,999 came up to me and said, you need to go for the Olympic Games. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And that was it. It wasn't like I thought about it over a long period of time. I was just getting, it was like peer pressure, I guess, of these older swimmers bugging me to go swim. And so I decided to do it. My favorite event was the 50 freestyle. It's an event where you really can't make any mistakes. You start, you go, you finish, and that's it. The race is over. And you know, people made such a big deal about my age and being so old, and I really think it worked to my advantage. I'll never forget, there's what's called a ready room, where you walk in, and it's where all the athletes have to be 20 minutes before you swim. And if you're not in this ready room, you're disqualified. I don't know if they show it on TV. Sometimes you'll see the athletes sitting in rows with their caps on and towels around their neck and their sweats on and stuff. And so I walk in, and it's the finals of the 50 freestyle. And I look over, and there's this girl, it looks like she's about to throw up. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely going to beat her, you know. And there's another girl, looks like she's about to pass out. I'm like, well, she's toast, you know? And I knew what to expect. I'd been there, I'd done it, I had the experience. Age worked to my advantage, not to my disadvantage. And I swam the race. One thing that I did do is the finals were in the morning, which was unusual. Usually I swam them at night, but because of the time change, they try to show them live here, so they had us swim like at 10 in the morning for the finals. And I went over at 6:45 in the morning, and I was the only person there except for Bob Costas in his little booth or whatever. And hey, Bob, you know. And I went to the lane that I knew I was going to be in, which was lane number 4. And I dove in, and I was the only person in the pool. And I started to look where all the cameras were underwater, where the lines were. So I knew exactly what to expect when I was going to swim my race, where everything was, where I was going to breathe, how close I was to the wall, what were the markers. And you know, that's another thing that experience sort of teaches you is to be able to do that kind of stuff. And so I was ready when I got up there. And people ask me, well, what do you think about before you swim? Like, do you visualize? Do you do that? Everyone's different. For me personally, if I've done all the work up to that point, I just want to go there and have fun. I don't want to think, I just want to do. And so I was standing behind my blocks, I'm kind of shaking, you know, and these girls are so intense. I mean, I remember seeing them and thinking I was that, you know, like when I was 17 and I was 21 years old, just nervous as heck, thinking that this is the most important thing they're ever going to do in their life, when in reality, for me, the most important thing in my life was my daughter. And so it sort of put things into perspective. And I'm standing behind the blocks, I'm kind of shaking, you know, my arms a little bit, get them loose, and I start stretching. I'm like, where are those NBA players? I said they were going to come watch me swim, you know? Where's LeBron and Kobe? And that's really what I was thinking before I was swimming. I'm like looking in the stands, you know? And my mom probably thinks I'm looking for her, but I'm looking for the NBA players. And so I see the U.S. team, and I see them. I'm like, all right, cool, they're up there, you know? And so I get up on the blocks, and they say, take your mark. And gun goes off, and I go, and I swim my race, and I didn't look, which I normally do. I didn't look where anyone was, and I touched the wall, and I look at the scoreboard, and I'm squinting because I can't see it because I'm old, and I'm looking, and I think I see a 2 by my name, and I'm like, wow, I got second place. That's the best individual placing I ever got. Cool, you know. I wanted to win, but I got second, so that's not bad. And then I look over, I'm like, well, who won, you know? And I look, I'm like, well, it's a German. My coach is German. I guess that's cool, you know. And then I look at the time, and it says 24.06 to 24.07. Then I started to get a little mad, you know. And you know, I actually really hate to lose. And you know, I was trying to be realistic in my head, like, well, I'm 41, and it is my best placing ever in an individual event. But I was mad. And I'm still mad, and I don't think I'll ever get over it. And people say, well, you know, it's great, you know, you went to Olympic Games, you should appreciate that. And yeah, that's great for people who think that way, but for me personally, I wanted to win. And whether it was realistic or not, I was seated 5th going into the Olympic Games, and I didn't care. My goal was to win a gold medal, and that's the way my thinking is I'm going to win the gold. Whether it happens or not, it didn't this time, but that's, I think, what got me even further to even get a silver medal was to think that I was going to win. And I go over and I shake her hand, and all these kind of words are going on in my head. I'm not really trying to show it, but I'm just smiling, you know. And I get out of the pool, and I start thinking, and I'm like, what could I have done to have won by 100th of a second, you know? And I go over and over in my head, and I can't think, and I feel like I did everything I possibly could. And NBC comes over and sticks a microphone in my face, and they say, you know, was there anything you could have done to get that 100th of a second? And I look at her, and I said, yeah, you know what? I filed my nails last night, and I shouldn't have filed my nails. And I really did. I filed my nails the night before. That was the only thing I could think of, that, like, there's that 100th of a second in my nail. I was bored watching House, and I'm like, oh, my nails are kind of long, I'm going to file them. And that's 100th of a second right there. You can't even blink that fast. So the other thing that the NBC asked me is, you know, what do you want your daughter to take coming out of these Olympic Games? And I thought about that for a second. I'm like, you know what? When she's old enough to understand it all, I really want her to realize that you don't have to put an age limit on your dreams. And that's why one other reason why I wrote this book is I want people to know that they don't have to put an age limit on their dreams. And when I dove in that water, the water didn't know my age, so what did it matter how old I was? If I was the fastest, I deserved to be up there and swim. And That's really sort of the gist of the book also, is to don't put an age limit on your dreams, and that age really is just a number.